Good morning, Internet. Sorry about the voice. I've had a cold the last few days and yesterday I had no voice at all. I could only speak in a whisper. I thought it had come back this morning, but yeah, it seems to be failing. Anyway, we'll see how long it lasts. Now, you might have seen this quilt behind me in a few videos. That's because it's taken me a ridiculously long time to finish it because things just kept getting in the way of getting it done. And to be honest, there was quite a long bit where I just wasn't inspired to get it done because it's kind of a copy of a quilt I've made before. A bit of backstory. I am the Rainbow You're rep for the local branch of my union, the Tertiary Education Union. And over the years I've made a few different banners and things for the union. And last year our organiser asked me to make a banner on the theme of Tū Kotahi, as Stand as One, which is one of our union's slogans. Hello parsnips, do you want to be part of the video? Other than centering it around Tū Kotahi, she gave me complete free rein on what the quilt would be, so I themed it around diversity. Anyway, one of our members saw this banner and really loved it, and she came to me and said, could I commission you to make one for me for my office? I don't like doing commissions, mainly because I do quilting as a hobby. I like to just make what inspires me at the time and what interests me. I don't want to be making what someone's asked me to make, and especially I don't want to make something that I've already made before, because repeating the same quilt is like, well, I've already learned those skills. This is not interesting to me. And the other reason is I couldn't actually charge what it would be worth in materials and time. That banner I made for the union, I mean, it's got a baby quilt size, it's not huge, but I added up how much time it took me, and even if I'd like charge minimum rate for my time, we'd be getting up over $1,000. I did it for the union, who did contribute to the cost of materials, but I did it because I really love the cause of the union and I think diversity is really important, and I do a lot of diversity work for the university in general, so that was just something that I did because I thought it was important. But I didn't want to repeat it, and I didn't want to have to charge $1,000, which the person who'd asked for it probably couldn't afford anyway. So I said no. She was really insistent, so I said, okay, I'm not going to make you that big quilt, but how about I make you a little mini quilt, because a few years earlier I'd made a little tiny rainbow banner for the union just to hang in the window so that people coming to the offices would know that there was a rainbow friendly space. So I said, how about I make one like that for you? Instead of putting TEU on it, I'll put some other meaningful word. We agreed that Aroha, which is Te Reo for love, would be the best word to put on there. In the original TEU rainbow quilt, because TEU are all nice blocky letters, I was able to piece them into the quilt, but for Aroha I decided to appliqué. And about halfway through the process I thought, oh, I should make a video about this. But being me, I didn't actually think this until I was a long way into sewing the background rainbow, so I didn't actually film most of that part, so this isn't really a tutorial, it's kind of a semi-tutorial, and also just this is how I did this. For the background, I just sewed together a bunch of rectangles that were 2.5 inches by 3.5 inches. For each stripe of the rainbow. I sewed together 12 of those rectangles to a strip and then sewed the 6 strips together. Pretty simple, so I don't think it's a great lack that I don't really have any tutorial to show you on that part. So to get the lettering, I just printed off the letters in a nice large chunky font. I ended up having to spread it over 2 pages, but that's okay because I'm going to be cutting out the letters anyway. And now I just need to trace them onto the fusible interfacing. And the important thing is to remember with this is we've got to trace it upside down. Now, a light table makes this a lot easier, but you could do it against the window or just however is easiest for you to trace. You don't have to trace the whole word at once, which is quite good because it means you can sort of squeeze letters into little scraps. I'm using Heat and Bond Featherlight, but you could really use just about anything as long as it's sticky on both sides. And then as I trace each letter, I'm just going to cut it out really roughly. It doesn't have to be exact. In fact, it's better if it's not exact. Better if you leave a little bit of extra around it. It's just so that you've got some extra to fuse onto the fabric. And because I'm mean and don't want to spend money on the stuff which I have to buy from America because half the shops here don't seem to stock it, I try and rearrange the letters to fit them into as small a space as possible so that I can not waste too much of it. You don't have to be too exact about your tracing because it's raw edge applique. It's going to lose a bit of definition around its edges anyway. And really, if you're slightly out, no one's going to know because no one knows what you'd intended. So as long as you can read the letters, that's all that matters. Now that I've got my letters cut out, I'm going to fuse them onto the fabric. And again, it doesn't matter what order you do those in. Using a nice black, dark grey fabric should contrast nicely. And I'm going to iron onto the back of the fabric. So I'm again trying to save fabric by fitting the letters in nice and close together. And with the Heat and Bond, the instructions is to press firmly for about 2 seconds. Seems like about 2 seconds. If you're using something different, then obviously you follow whatever instructions you have from that. Next step is to cut the letters out. This is when you do want to be pretty accurate about your cutting because this is the actual shape of the letters as they're going to appear on the project. But again, if you're a wee bit out and make the odd mistake, no one's going to know. So you just do whatever looks good. I might be being a bit paranoid, but I don't use my best scissors for this. I use my sort of secondary scissors because you are cutting through paper as well as fabric. And like you want the super sharp scissors so they'll cut the fabric well, but you also don't want to blunt them on the paper. So second best scissors job. And this is where you see why you reverse the letters when you trace them, because now when you turn them over, the nice side of the fabric is the letter the right way round. When you get to the middle bits of letters. Sometimes easier to swap for a little tiny pair of scissors. So for the next step, I'm going to go to the design wall and just lay out roughly where I think the letters should go. This is really just so I can get a sense of what it's going to look like before I'm looking at it up close. So I kind of get a feel for the spacing, feel for how far up I want them to be on the rainbow. I could like measure really accurately how far we are from each side, but really, like, I've got a grid here, so I'm probably going to want my big A to start somewhere in the middle of this green rectangle and my little a to start somewhere in the middle of this one. I'm not going to measure the exact distance to this point because with lettering, there's the visual weight has more of an impact than the actual measurement. So if I put that center point there right in the middle, it's probably actually going to look a little bit unbalanced. So I'll probably put it more like that so that it's just a little bit over, because the weight of the letter sort of starts a little bit further over in this one. I don't know, it makes sense to me. So now on the ironing board, I know that I want my letters to go from about here to about here. I want them to be along a line that's probably about 2/3 of the way down the green. I'll lay the ruler along just so that the baseline of the letters is going to be nice and straight. I'm not going to be like 100% relying on the ruler, just to give me a baseline. And I'm not measuring the distance between letters because different letters have different kind of visual weights to them. So if I made the spacing between the H and the O and the H and the A the same, it would look like they were spaced differently just because you've got more open space here than you have here. So I'm quite happy with that as a layout. And now I'm going to peel the back off my letters. And lay them down again about where I wanted them. Apologies if you can hear the weed eater outside. The neighbour's boy is doing my lawns to earn some pocket money. And now I'm just going to press those in place. Again, with the heat and bond, it's 4 to 6 seconds on each piece. Okay, and that's it stuck down. The next step is going to be to make a quilt sandwich. You can do some stitching around the edge now if you want, and if this was on a bigger quilt I probably would, but because this is such a tiny little mini quilt, I'll probably just do the stitching around the edge of the letters as part of the free motion quilting. I won't bother to stitch something now. You could also, if you wanted the edges not to fray too much, you can put some zigzag or blanket stitch or something around the edge. I'm not so worried about that because this is going to be a wall hanging, so it doesn't really, it's not going to get handled enough to fray a lot, and if it does fray, well, that's just part of the design, that it's raw edge applique, it's not like turned applique or something. Because this is a wall hanging, it doesn't really matter what I put on the back, but I found this nice big cheerful piece of fabric which I think it goes quite nicely with it. It's similar chunkiness to the lettering. That's my logic anyway. I'm planning on putting a black binding on it, so this will actually look good with that binding as well. For the quilting part, I first sewed down the appliqué pieces, making that part of the quilting, and then I echoed around them. After I did that first echo, I decided to just keep echoing and kind of, we used to do that in primary school where you write a word and then you draw a line around it and then make the line bigger and bigger and sort of make this exploding shape out of it. And I thought, I wonder what that would look like in quilting. So I tried doing that and I think it's actually quite effective. I think it kind of draws the eye into the centre and the word quite nicely. So here's the finished quilt. I've put the binding on. I didn't film that bit because I forgot. I think it looks quite effective. I've put some hanging loops on the back so that it'll be able to be hung on the wall. The observant among you might notice that I've somehow managed to make the backing upside down. I thought I was being really careful when I laid out the quilt sandwich, but I must have flipped it at some point. So the flower stalks all point the wrong way, but I don't think it's too immediately noticeable. I'm back at work on Monday, if this cold is gone, so I'll be able to take the quilt in and give it to the recipient. Hopefully she enjoys it. Hopefully she still remembers that she asked me to make it. It has been a really long time. I hope you've enjoyed this video and appreciate the fact that I've sacrificed what remains of my voice to make it. Don't forget to do all those nice internety things like liking and subscribing, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time, hopefully with my voice returned. Bye, Internet. I feel like I should make a trans joke about this is my voice 0 seconds on tea.